football, this game is for us all. From Seattle down toward the Keys, this game is you, this game is me. Cats, dogs, and Steele, be the tree. This game is America, so sing it loud with me. College football forever. College football forever. Downtown LA, Starkville sit. 1 week you're up next, take a dip. Run the rock or let it rip. This game is America. All say, can you sing it with me?
We just stepped on her face with a hot-tail Trojan across her nose. Whoa, Nelly!
College football forever. College football forever. College football forever. College football forever.
College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Sherbert of 24/7 Sports have you covered. Beginning right now.
And good morning to those that are listening and watching live, and good afternoon, good evening if you might be catching this later on throughout the day, even throughout the week. It is another installment of JC and Morgan. We welcome you to the talking season. Mike Morgan, and soon to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that puts together a 376-page college football guide, Phil Steele. I say it's talking season. We had Big 12 Media Days last week. We have ACC Media Days this week. And then we'll have SEC Media Days next week, which I know a number of you that listen to our sister show on the Chief Sports Network, ITG, that's when the program will be back on Monday. In the meantime, let's do what we always do on this program, talk a ton of college football, because we're not that far off. And if you have already purchased your Phil Steele college football guide, you've even got a greater fever for the season. Phil, let me see if I got this straight. 138 teams, 376 pages. Is that correct?
That is right. It's the biggest one we've had. We had to add pages this year because, of course, 2 more teams come in with North Dakota State and Sacramento State. But we give the same amount of coverage to the 2 teams, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Georgia State, that we do to Alabama, Texas, and Ohio State. 2 full pages on each team.
That's fantastic. You and I were talking before we came on. We're now over 20 years, you and I, of talking around this time every year. I've told the story a million times how I got introduced to your guide. It was actually by accident a DJ down the hall of a country music station. He had no use for it. He was too busy spinning records, and he thought I might, and he was certainly right. And it was the best introduction to a guide that I've received. And you're no longer a well-kept secret. You've kind of blown up before our eyes, and you've expanded. It's not just the amount of pages. You've got the website, philsteele.com, and a number of other things. I'm curious to start off. We've talked about on this show, there's a couple of magazines that have re-entered. So, you've got about a handful overall. There was a time there was like 20 of them. But very few are able to stay in business. There is cost involved. Obviously, you have to have a certain amount of demand to stay in business and make a profit. So what has been key for you to have the success that you've had?
Well, I think the key, Mike, clearly is the amount of information we put in the magazine. And that was my thing in the beginning. When we started the magazine, there's about 30 magazines out there. And we were sending them out to all the radio stations. I just wanted to get this thing in people's hands because in my mind, it's like 138 media guides rolled into one. All the information you could want is on the same team for every page, and it's in the same spot. You want the last 5 years records, stat leaders, complete write-up on each position. I mean, a lot of magazines out there might give you a couple paragraphs on a team. If you're a group of 6 team, that might give you a paragraph if they cover you at all. I give you a complete write-up on the quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, defensive backs, special teams, coaches, offense, defense, overall outlook, recap of last year's games, a 4 deep where you can actually go through and not only get the player's name, but where he ranked coming out of high school, what he's done. The schedule gives you a complete schedule analysis of when these teams have met before, things like that. It's just, it's like getting 138 media guides rolled into one. So the key is get it in somebody's hands, make them open it up, and they have to have it every single year after that.
Yeah, it does become what I call a healthy addiction. That is for sure. Phil, we're at a kind of a new wave in college football. The Big Ten has won 3 consecutive national championships with 3 different teams. I think even most Big Ten fans would acknowledge, and your magazine acknowledges, the SEC is still the deepest conference in college football. And with all due respect to the ACC, Miami had a great year, obviously, 40 yards away from a national championship. The Big 12 had Texas Tech, one of the best stories, and they're not going away this year. But it seems to me there is a growing gap between Big Ten, SEC, and the other conferences, not the Group 6 conferences, the other Power 4 conferences. Does your data, because I know you're big on data, does your data on the players back that up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's clearly the top 2 conferences are the Big Ten, the SEC. Then there's a space. Then come the ACC and Big 12. Which one is better? You can make an argument for either one. And then, of course, the Group of 6 after that. And you'll find it interesting, Mike, when I talk to the Group of 6 coaches and we're going over the rosters with them. And this year I went through the rosters with 133 of the 138 teams. But the Group of 6 will say, hey, he's really good. He's going to do this. And he won't be with us next year because they know they're going to get bought by one of the Power 5 or Power 4 conferences out there. But clearly, the SEC and the Big Ten are by far the best conferences out there.
And it doesn't feel like that's going to change. And unless something dramatic changes with the setup, I only see that gap widening. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, the NIL does that, because, Texas Tech has proven if you get that NIL money, you got Cody Campbell throwing all the cash out there that you can compete with the big boys, but the entire Big 12 conference can't get up to that level. And a lot of it's TV revenue. I mean, the Big 10, the SEC got the biggest contracts.
Yeah, they got, and that's exactly, that is where it all starts. You can sell a bunch of tickets. You can sell out your stadium every week. It's still going to pale in comparison to what the TV money is going to be. This is a unique year, Phil, too. I'm guessing for you, putting together the magazine a little bit easier with the way they changed the portal setup, right? Because you now have a more definitive idea of what the roster is going to look like in the spring or the end of spring as compared to what you had last year to deal with or the previous years.
Thank God, Mike. I don't have to rewrite 138 teams after the spring portal. The spring portal last year didn't close till April 29th. The magazine goes to press June 9th. You have to wait for players to sign. Then you have to rewrite each position on each team for players that have left, players that have come in. It was just a complete nightmare. And here's the thing that I found this year talking to the coaches. They felt they had more of a team this spring. The team that they entered spring with, they didn't have to worry about skirting around issues like your third team, worrying that the guy's going to transfer after spring was over. They could coach them harder this spring. The players knew they weren't going to get replaced after spring practice was over. So the team that they entered spring with was the one they left with. And almost every coach said it felt much more like a team this year. I think we're going to see a better brand of football on the field this season.
I'm with you on that. Certainly look forward to that. Okay, let's start with a couple of things. We're going to start with, obviously, those 2 conferences we just spoke of. Let's start with a little Big Ten. Again, 3 years, 3 different national championship teams. Every year, it seems like Ohio State, you could make an argument, has the most talented roster in college football, if not one of the top 5. That doesn't seem to be any different this season. Michigan, we don't know. The Sharon Moore debacle, they're still recovering from that. But they're going to have one of the most talented teams. I don't think that's going to change under Kyle Whittingham, who I think is the perfect guy to salvage that situation. And then Indiana, I think people want to think Indiana is going to just go away, that it's like a 2-year run, but they can't possibly sustain it. I don't know. I'm not betting against Kurt Signetti, that's for sure. Give me your opinion of the hierarchy this year in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I'll give you a rundown of the top teams. Ohio State, as you mentioned, they've got the best offense in the country this year. They got Julian Sayin back, Bo Jackson, 1,000-yard rusher, best receiving core in college football. And the offensive line last year was above average, but not great. I think this year they're a Joe Moore Award contender. So it's the best offense in the country. And while they lose a ton of talent on the defense, remember last year, they lost number 1, number 2, and number 5 draft picks off the defensive line. This year, they only lose a number 2 and a number 6. The linebacking core was what got hit the hardest, as well as the secondary, but they'll still be solid there. Ohio State does have a tougher schedule this year. They have to play at Texas, at Iowa, at Indiana, and at USC. With Indiana, Coach Signetti's doing a phenomenal job, and he's got the talent once again. And he always produces an all-conference quarterback. Go back to my first discussion with Coach Signetti when they first entered the magazine. They lost their all-conference quarterback. I'm like, Coach, you got a big gap now. He's like, Phil, I always have an all-conference quarterback. I'm like, okay, we'll see. And guess what? He proved it, and he's proved it every single year. I think he'll develop Josh Hoover into that, and it's a loaded Indiana roster. In fact, when I go through their schedule, Mike, the only game I don't have them favored this year is Ohio State, and I've got that a pick'em game because it's at home. Oregon could be that fourth different Big Ten team to win the national title in 4 years. They've got Dante Moore surprisingly back. He could have been a top 10 draft pick. One of the best defensive lines in college football. One of the best receiving cores in college football. The offensive line is loaded. They are dangerous. Now, they do have to play USC on the road. They also play Ohio State on the road, but watch out for them. And then, as you mentioned, Michigan, I think Kyle Whittingham, remember when they were going through, maybe this coach, and you're like, wow, they're in trouble. Hiring Kyle Whittingham was huge, and he comes in. They've got the offensive line. They've got the defense. Bryce Underwood's in his second year. Now, they do have to play a tough schedule. You look at Oregon. They play Indiana at home, at Ohio State. But I think Michigan deserves to be up there. And if you're looking for a sleeper in the Big Ten this year, keep your eyes on USC. Lincoln Riley told me this is the best defense he's had since they've been at USC. They bring in Gary Patterson as the defensive coordinator. He also told me Jaden Mayava is going to be potentially a first-round draft pick next year after the season he has this year. An outstanding, loaded offensive line. Wayman Jordan back at running back. And they get Oregon and Ohio State at home. They were 7-0 at home last year. If they pull those upsets against Ohio State and Oregon at home, all of a sudden they're in the mix, whereas everybody's right now just counting on Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon.
Is there a sleeper team in that league?
Yeah, USC would be, in my mind, the sleeper team that could potentially get there. And then maybe keep your eyes on Washington as well. When you look at Washington, there was the drama over Damon Williams, but that's all done with. They do have a lot of talent this year. But I think if I'm looking for a sleeper in the Big Ten, it'd be USC.
Isn't it crazy that we're talking about Southern Cal as a sleeper? But, I mean, the results have not been there for Lincoln Riley to what they didn't pay him all that money to just be good or to be a sleeper. They paid him all that money to have Pete Carroll-like results, and it just hasn't come. I mean, you watch the NFL draft, as I do every year, they certainly have players that are selected. They have talent. They have a quarterback this year that'll be in that category as well. But there's something that seems to be missing there, and I can't put my finger on it.
Well, you go back to last year, and when they played Oregon at the end of the season, had they beaten Oregon, they would have made the playoff last year. So, and it was a good game. They gave Oregon a good game. It was on the road. Their other losses were to Notre Dame, which they lost by 10, and then Illinois, which they lost on the last-second field goal. But they could easily have been in the playoff last year had they upset Oregon on the road. This year they get Oregon and Ohio State at home. Maybe this is the year.
Maybe this is the year. All right, let's dive into some SEC, shall we? I can't find any guide or any website or anything that doesn't have Texas and Georgia as the top two predicted teams in the conference. Why do you think that is based on your data? What is the rationale there, and how big is the gap? Because there are some other good teams in the league, whether it's an Ole Miss, an LSU, depending on how that transformation goes. Some people might make an argument for an A&M, an Oklahoma, I know you have South Carolina, one of the most improved teams in the country, and ranked in the top 20. I think that's the highest I've seen the Gamecocks ranked in any of the guides. But when you look at it, how big is the gap between those two at the top and everybody else?
And not a huge gap, Mike. I think when you look at Georgia and Texas, they do look like the best teams. But frankly, I think it's going to be tough for any SEC team to go through the schedule 9-0 this year. I think somebody drops a game. Everybody drops a game somewhere along the line. Now, when I look at Georgia, the things to like this year, first of all, that defense. It's a homegrown defense. And I did something in the magazine this year, Mike, about homegrown teams that utilize the portal but are mostly the guys they recruited as freshmen, sophomores, juniors. They've all been up there. And Georgia is the most homegrown team in the SEC. The defense loaded. NFL caliber players, maybe not the household names all across the board like they used to have, but they have my number 9 rated defensive line, number 5 rated linebackers, number 3 DBs. Then you look at them offensively. I thought Gunnar Stockton did the best, probably on fourth down and in the fourth quarter last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's back, now experienced. They've got one of the best running back corps led by Nate Frazier and a top-notch offensive line with Drew Bobo back. They couldn't handle the bye situation in the playoff last year. That hurt them, but they did win the SEC. And when you look at the schedule, they do have to play Alabama and Ole Miss on the road, but it'd be tough to find games where they're going to be an underdog. And with Texas, Arch Manning started out last year really slow. And part of it was the fact he had one returning starter on the offensive line. Now he's got a veteran offensive line in front of him. They've got the running backs. Last year, their top running back didn't even top 600 yards. This year, they had in a 1,000-yard rusher from NC State in Hollywood Smothers, a 1,000-yard rusher from Arizona State in Raleek Brown. They've got the receiving core. Wingo and Mosley are back, plus they add in Cam Coleman. Arch Manning's got a great supporting cast. And if you watched him at the end of the year, he looked like that Arch Manning you thought you would have at the start of the year. I think he's a Heisman contender. And defensively, they're loaded. Colin Simmons, bringing in Rasheem Biles, coming in from Pitt, I think was a big pickup. Their schedule manageable in the fact that they get Ohio State at home. Oklahoma's in Dallas. They get Florida at home. Toughest road games are right at the end of the year, at LSU, at Texas A&M. But I think those two are the top 2 teams, but close to them. Alabama. And everybody forgets, Alabama was the number 1 seed in the SEC playoff. Recency, everybody watched them get blown out by Georgia and blown out by Indiana and struggle with Oklahoma. But I think they have an improved run game. I have a lot of faith in Kalen DeBoer. They're actually my number 1 surprise team in the country because, believe it or not, Alabama is not going to be in the preseason top 10 for the first time since, I think, 2005. But I think they have a great shot at making the playoff. They're my number 1 surprise team this year. Oklahoma was my number 1 surprise team last year, and they're on my surprise team list again this year. Top-notch defense. Brett Venables knows defense. If John Mateer can look like he did at the start of last year, the offense will be improved. The thing I don't like about Oklahoma, they have to play Michigan on the road, Georgia on the road, Texas away from home, and Florida in the swamp. So those are all tough games. And then, as you mentioned, Ole Miss is a contender. I think Texas A&M under Mike Elko, contender once again. Then you've got LSU and Tennessee. It's a very deep conference.
How many? You mentioned 2 of the surprise teams. You're what, top 25 surprise teams? 2. You mentioned 2 from the SEC. How many do you have total, and who are they?
Yeah, on the surprise team list, and to clarify what a surprise team is, it's a team that is not top 10 at the start of the year. Every February, I project the AP top 10. I've had about a 95% success rate on that, so I throw those 10 teams out. You can't be in the surprise team category if you're going to be in the preseason top 10. But I've got 12 teams overall on the list. Alabama, though, is number 1. BYU is number 2. And going over the team with Coach Satake, all 11 years has been a head coach. This is the best team he's put on the field in his 11 years. He's had some good ones. Oklahoma is number 3. USC, who we talked about, is number 4. And those would be my top surprise teams.
What is it about the Gamecocks that you like the most?
First of all, that they're under the radar. Isn't that when Coach Beamer seems to do his best work, when nobody expects anything, and then all of a sudden he's getting them into good expectations? But I think if you go back and look at last year, the offensive line was injury-plagued again. I think the offensive line will be improved. I like what Beamer did in the portal, bringing in experienced guys. guys who have started at other places. Now they're going to have to mold together and come together quickly, but I think they will. I think they have plenty of talent, plenty of experience. Then you look at Lenore Sellers. He was Superman at the end of the 2024 season. Maybe not up to his standards last year. I think he returns to form. They've got Nick Harbor, who emerged late in the year last year. And then defensively, everybody was on South Carolina last year as being a potential playoff team because they had their quarterback back and they had Dylan Stewart back. But I saw the losses on that defensive line last year. I saw those guys in the NFL. I thought that they would struggle a little bit, and they did. I think I had them picked 11th in the SEC last year. But this year, when I talked to Coach Beamer, he says that the defensive line reminds him a lot of the group in 2024. They got 6 defensive tackles they can play, depth at defensive end. Dylan Stewart is back again. I like the defense overall. So the defense, quarterback, and then, when you factor in the schedule this year, I do rate it number 25. They have to play Bama, Florida, Oklahoma, all on the road, as well as Clemson. But I think when Shane Beamer is under the radar, not, being picked high, that's, I think, when South Carolina does their best.
And you have them 16 overall?
16 in the power poll, Mike, but due to the schedule, okay, I rank them number 28, and that is because of the schedule. There's going to be a couple losses in there with that road slate that they have. And they also have to play Georgia at home this year.
Yeah, and that lends into one of my favorite things you do, and I reference it all the time during the season. Even with the SEC now going to 9, which is going to be extra losses for the conference, no matter how you slice it, there is a major difference between the schedules of teams within the conference. Those 9 are not all built the same. I know they try to make it as equitable as possible, but it's not even. I mean, if you look at what Oklahoma's schedule was last year compared to Texas's, you would have thought, the Oklahoma did something to make the SEC office angry at them. But you actually rank it, and you have a very easy, digestible way to see it. It's color coded. I like that. I like to keep it simple for people like myself that can't always digest it all. But you've got within the conference, Mississippi State having the I guess that would be the
toughest,
the most difficult schedule. Yeah, Mississippi State 1, Missouri 2, Arkansas 3, Kentucky 4, Ole Miss 5 in terms of the most difficult. The easiest you have Georgia, the softest, and again, we put that in quotations. He's still playing 9 SEC league games. Vanderbilt 2, Bama 3, LSU 4, and first time I've seen this in a long time, Carolina is 5 because they seem to always draw one of the more difficult ones, but I've picked up on that too. I think this is the most manageable schedule Shane Beamer's had in a while. Just talk about what went into you producing that, because I think it's a really important part. If you're trying to forecast what these teams are going to do, don't just assume the 9 conference games are all the same.
Yeah, and it's such a huge part in predicting for the magazine, Mike. As an example, you look at the last 2 years, Florida and Oklahoma, just unbearable SEC schedules. They were taking on all the big boys. And as you mentioned, Oklahoma and Texas, if you'd given Oklahoma Texas's schedule and Texas Oklahoma's schedule, maybe the results would have been about the same. Those two teams are both very talented. One team to watch this year would be Missouri. Missouri's been playing like the softest schedule of the Big 12, of the SEC, I should say, the last couple of years. Now they play the second toughest. They don't have a lot of easy outs. They play all the big boys. They play Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Texas A&M. They do get a break in the fact that I've got 3 teams rated in green. Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Kentucky, I think, are the 3 teams sort of in rebuilding processes there. And they play all 3 of them. But other than that, Missouri's playing a lot of the big boys. And so it makes a massive difference, I think, in the conference standings. Billy Napier was taking on the toughest schedule every year at Florida, and he's now working at James Madison. So, John Summerall doesn't have an easy schedule either this year. On the chart that I list on philsteele.com, we list how many home and away, because some teams have 5 home, 5 away, and give you their records from last year. But it's not all about last year's records, because sometimes this year's teams, like Vanderbilt, for example, last year was a double-digit win team. I don't think they'll be a double-digit win team this year.
Staying within the conference, you mentioned you talked to, what, 134 coaches? By the way, I'd like to how many?
133 of the 138.
Do you want to call out the 5 that didn't do it just so we embarrass them here on a national show?
No, don't want to do that.
You can tell me off the air, and I'll do it on my own time. Come on, you guys, stop slacking. Give Phil the information that he needs to put together this guide. There are 5 new coaches in the SEC. I'm guessing you talked to most of them, if not all of them. We're talking about Lane Kiffin, Will Stein, John Summerall, Ryan Silverfield. I just
Pete
forgot.
Golding.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I it's hard for me to think of him as new, but yes, he is new. He's the interim that got bumped up. So I'm just curious of those new situations. What do you think are which ones are in the most healthy of situations? Which ones clearly, I mean, there's usually when there's a coaching change, not in the case of Ole Miss, where a guy just bolts for another job before in the middle of a playoff run, but usually a coaching change is made for a reason, that the program is suffering some hard times. And in the old days, the term rebuild would apply. There was no portal. It would take 3-4 years to get the recruiting right. But that's no longer the case. And I think what Indiana has done has made every fan base less patient and say, look, we don't need to be waiting 3-4 years. Get it done now. So when you talk to these coaches in the SEC, the newbies, what do you like about some of them, and which ones do you think there's, quite frankly, a tough road to hoe?
Best situation's Pete Golding at Ole Miss
Yeah.
because he knows the roster inside and out. Of course, they got the playoff, and then getting Trinidad Chambliss to come back, huge. They've got Kawan Lacey coming back, an All-American running back. The offensive line is good, and defensively, they've got NFL guys sprinkled throughout. So I think Pete Golding, of the 5 new guys, comes out with the best record this year. Lane Kiffin brought in all those transfers, as you mentioned. They do have some tough games on the schedule. They got to play Ole Miss. I think Ole Miss might be fired up a little bit for that one. They've got at Auburn, Alabama, and Texas at home. Potential's there, but it is probably a heavy transfer portal roster. We'll see how they fare this year. Florida and Auburn, very high on John Summerall, very high on Alex Golish. I think both are going to come in, do good, but both have to face some pretty tough schedules and have portals. So I think they're more in the middle. And then the 2 coaches I think that step into the toughest situation, Ryan Silverfield of Arkansas, that's practically a brand new team. They've got like 90 new players on it, and they're playing the usual tough schedule. And the same thing with Will Stein. Stepping in, they've got a ton of new players, very few players back from last year. If you look at Kentucky, for example, they've got 3 starters back from last year's roster on offense, 3 on defense. Arkansas's got 4 and 2. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a rebuilding year for Arkansas and Kentucky.
I'm certainly with you there. The one thing Kentucky has is a quarterback that's certainly, you're talking about a guy that fought tooth and nail for the Notre Dame job and almost got it over a guy who's going to be a Heisman Trophy candidate this year. So at least, unlike Arkansas, where that's a little less defined, at least Kentucky's got a signal caller in Mincy that you just feel and hope, if you're a Kentucky fan, that he can go out there and compete at an SEC level right away.
Yeah, and Coach Stein feels that he's got the mental makeup, and all the indications are that he can play at a high level. And as you mentioned, he was battling C.J. Carr all the way down at Notre Dame last year. So I think that's a good pickup. How quickly that offensive line comes together in front of him, how quickly the skill players help him out will be a big thing. Remember, Arch Manning struggled last year at the start of the year with a somewhat inexperienced offense.
Yeah, and a line that didn't really do much blocking. On the LSU side of things, you get Sam Leavitt, and that's a guy that Tennessee certainly wanted. A lot of teams wanted. They went ahead and ponied up and got him. It's weird because the hype surrounding that hire, I mean, it's going to be one of the most talked about stories this year in college football, bar none. And yet you talk to people that are close to LSU, and they are quick to point out this is not a flawless team by any stretch. That they have some weaknesses. They're not as stout on the line of scrimmage as they might ordinarily be. This is not maybe some of the dominating defenses of years past. And it's hard to expect the type of wide receiving cores that you had, say, in 2019, where you've got NFL Pro Bowl guys all over the place, like Jefferson and Chase and whatnot. But they still have a lot of talent. What do you have LSU? What's the forecast for Lane and the boys this year?
Yeah, the talent's clearly there. I think a lot of it depends, is Sam Leavitt going to be 100% healthy and stay healthy all season long? If that's the case, that's a big plus, especially if he looks like he did at Arizona State 2 years ago, leading them to the playoffs. But just so many new pieces built in here. How quickly they come together is going to be huge. I thought maintaining Whit Weeks was big. Tamarcus Cooley in the secondary, big. And of course, the transfer portal class. They bring in 107 FBS starts, 46 FCS starts. That's a big plus there. So I think when you look at LSU overall, tough schedule. I don't have them at the very top of the SEC this year. I've got them right in that next level.
Which is always that next level is still pretty good. That's where the SEC kind of separates a bit. You mentioned schedule a couple of times. You did something different in the guide this year that I think is really interesting and overall kind of helps put everything in perspective. Talk about the difference between the portal and homegrown evaluations in the magazine that you have.
Yeah, and the homegrown, I did research last year on it, and it's basically if you bring in, you're more of a team, I think, if the guys that you brought in as freshmen, sophomores, juniors, they all know the team inside. Now coaches know them. You're not trying to bring in 60 new guys and turn them into a team all in 1 year. And it's on the Big Ten page this year. I think it's like page 84 or something. And it goes over in fact, I'm going to do a blog on it on Wednesday where you can look at the top teams in the homegrown factor and then the top in the portal. Look at last year, for example. All the teams that were crazy and bringing in players after spring practice was over, majority of them losing records. Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Charlotte, all finished near the very bottom record-wise. But the teams with the stability that use the transfer portal but don't rely on the transfer portal, I think they have the best situation.
So if I open up my Phil Steele guide and I look at my favorite team, I'll know exactly how many returning starters, portal versus homegrown, right?
Yes, it gives you two numbers. The first number is the overall returning starters. And to be a returning starter, you had to be a starter last year and earn the starting job in the spring at your new school. And then the second number is the guys that returned from last year's squad.
So who are the most experienced teams in college football?
The most experienced teams this year, take a quick look at the chart. We got number one on that list. Hold on one second.
I'm making you scurry all through these 376
Yes.
pages. This is what happens, Phil. When you're so thorough, it's not easy to find all these things.
Yeah, number one is Air Force, which is unusual for a service academy.
Wow, okay.
Number two this year is Maryland. Number three is BYU. And as mentioned, Satake has his best team that he's got there. In the SEC, one of the reasons I'm on South Carolina, they're my number 5 on the experience chart.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're very high there. And then taking a look around, I would say Notre Dame, number 4. All those are right at the top of the chart.
Yeah, I think in the case of the Gamecocks, they have the most returning offensive snaps in the SEC, which is a strong number that I think any coach would love to see. You're always big on Heisman Trophy forecasts, and very often you nail it, or at least you get the right names that are going to New York. What is that looking like for 2026?
Yeah, all the big names are up there. This is an exceptional quarterback class. Arch Manning, Dante Moore, C.J. Carr, Trinidad Chambliss, Julian Sayin, Darian Mensah, Hoover, I think, is going to develop at Indiana, Sam Leavitt, Devin Dampier of Utah. There's a ton of names up there. It all goes team success, number success. A lot goes into it, but I know that the NFL teams are drooling over this quarterback class.
No question. Unlike last year, this year's expected to be vastly improved. Phil, we'll get you out here and get you out of here in just a second. All right. Of the Power 4 conferences, give me the conference champion you have for each one.
Well, in the Big Ten, I actually went with a 3-way tie. I've got Ohio State, Indiana, and Oregon all finishing with the same record. The SEC, I went with a 2-way tie, Georgia and Texas each finishing with the same record. ACC, to me, it's Miami. And believe it or not, they haven't won a conference title since they joined the ACC in 2004. I'm going to call for it this year. And in the Big 12, I think it comes down to another rematch, Texas Tech against BYU. And by the way, in the magazine, I picked Tech at the top of the Big 12, and that was going into the magazine process started June. I was about 85% sure Sorsby was not going to play. So that was in my thought process that it was not Brendan Sorsby. So my Texas Tech pick stays the same.
All right. Give the folks out there information on two things: how to get the guide if they haven't already, and I know several people already have, and also how they can keep in line with what you're putting out there on the website throughout the year.
I appreciate that, Mike. Now, the magazine is only available at 2 brick-and-mortar stores. You can go to Barnes & Noble and Books A Million are the only 2 places that you can get the magazine. They're exclusive deals. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. Walk in there, scoop up a copy. It's 376 pages. Or you can go to philsteele.com. When you go to philsteele.com, and order the magazine, we're going to charge you a shipping charge, but we do give you the digital magazine absolutely free. And the digital magazine's actually updated all the way through September, any changes that happen between now and September. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, philsteele.com. And I put up a daily blog every day on philsteele.com, like the one you were talking about, Mike, with the SEC schedule strength. We've got all the conferences' schedule strengths up there in the same way. Just go to philsteele.com, get yourself a lot of free information.
How many years is this for you now?
32 years, Mike. It's a good thing I started at the age of 10.
I heard you say on a show I was listening to in Atlanta, the goal is 50, and then you might retire.
Yeah, I've got my retirement date set, and it will come in issue 50. So we have 18 more years of the magazine to go. 18
more years. Here's hoping we can all outlive the Phil Steele guide. Nothing is promised or guaranteed in that department, as we all know. We do know it's promised or guaranteed in the way of a great college football guide for the upcoming season. It's always Phil Steele, the most comprehensive, the most thorough magazine you can buy on the shelves right now at Books A Million and Barnes & Noble. Phil, 20-some-odd years we've done this. It's always a pleasure, and really appreciate you carving out some time.
Let's do it another 18, Mike.
You got it.
Appreciate you having me on. Always great to hear your voice and talk to you, Mike.
Same here, Phil. Thank you. Appreciate it. That's Phil Steele. He's got the guide out once again, the college football preview, second to none. We get paid nothing to say that, by the way, not a penny. It's really good. Now, I will say this. The guest that we had on 3 weeks ago, Brent Ciancia of Pick Six Previews, that's really good too. And that's going to be, he is about to start sending those off. So he takes a little bit longer. The race to be first on the shelf, I get it economically, but it's not always the best way to go in terms of information. There's a couple magazines that got out there early, and I'm not going to say which ones. If you're looking for your favorite team, it's like a paragraph. And some of the information is just flat out wrong. So, yeah, it's great. You can say, I got it first, and that will help sell some more copies. But for me, Steele and Ciancia, Pick Six Previews we had on the show a few weeks ago, those are the best. Those are the best two for sure. Speaking of all those interviews that we compiled during the summer, they're what we call evergreen. They're not so much time sensitive. You can listen to those. You can put your feet in the sand at your favorite beach and just go back to back to back. We had the Bear, Chris Felica, on last week's program. He was terrific. As always, we are powered by Advocare. Go ahead and type in the promo code Mike Morgan. Save 20% off your entire order, not just one item or two. And then you can also mention the fact that Nest and Wild Mattress is the most comfortable mattress on the planet. And you can go on their website. The owner will just ship it straight from Tupelo, Mississippi, to your door. There's some other news tidbits that I'll just say in closing. Ward Manuel's time as the Michigan AD could be over. His job is in jeopardy, an internal investigation going on. It's not been a good few months, should I say. I mean, the Sharon Moore situation, and then even though you win a national title in basketball, you lose your coach to the NBA. That's not necessarily what Ward Manuel had in mind. The college football playoff announces quarterfinal, semifinal dates and sites through 2031. Of course, we still don't know if we're staying on a 12-team playoff or if we're going to 16 or if we're going to 24. Those are some of the keynotes out there. Other than that, it's media days. Again, Big 12 last week, ACC this week, and SEC Media Days will commence next week from Tampa, Florida. I know, Tampa, Florida. They've had some SEC basketball tournaments there. That's the one kind of Florida destination that has hosted some SEC events over the years. We will be back before you know it. We'll have another guest lined up for you. As always, our thanks to our fearless producer, Mad Dog Phil Molinax, behind the scenes. Thank you all for tuning in and getting your football fix. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbor, tell your postal worker. We are available on every platform imaginable, from YouTube to Spotify to everything in between. For Phil, this is Mike saying so long. We'll see you next week on JC and Morgan. Take care.